Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @symbol CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION @symbol CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Herald Scotland on Wednesday the 11th of December 2024. From the news section. Pioneering floating offshore wind farm project hits major milestone. This article has been written by Craig Williams and it's being read by me, Corey. One of the world's first commercial-scale floating offshore wind projects is on track to be built in Scottish waters after the team behind it announced it has hit a major milestone. Muir Mhòr Offshore Wind Farm has submitted 2 key consent applications for consideration by the relevant authorities. The project is the first fully floating offshore wind farm from the ScotWind leasing process to reach the point of submitting both offshore and onshore consent applications for determination, following a 12-month period of consultation with local communities and stakeholders most impacted by the development. Once operational, the wind farm will be able to generate up to 1 gigawatt of clean power, enough to provide electricity for the equivalent of up to 1.2 million homes every year. David Hinshelwood, project director at Muir Mhòr Offshore Wind Farm, said, "The submission of our 2 consent applications is a hugely significant milestone, not just for our team who have worked so hard to get here, but for Scotland and the rest of the UK as well. We have listened closely to those impacted by our development and made adjustments to our applications, taking on board the feedback and sensitivities they have raised, and trust this is reflected in the planning determinations. We are the first fully floating offshore wind farm from the 2022 ScotWind licensing round to reach the point of both offshore and onshore applications. In doing so, we are supporting the ambitions of governments in Scotland and the UK to be a world leader in floating offshore wind and a clean energy superpower. Muir Mhòr is on its way to becoming one of the world's first commercial-scale floating offshore wind projects. We are very excited to see what the future holds." The wind farm, whose name means Great Sea in Gaelic, will be located off the east coast of Scotland, approximately 63 kilometres from the coast of Peterhead. If the consent applications are approved in the next 9 to 12 months by the Scottish Government and Aberdeenshire Council, Muir Mhòr could start generating clean power in the early 2030s. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Craig Williams, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland on Wednesday the 11th of December 2024. From the news section. Glasgow's Clyde Hydrogen launches £5 million fundraising drive. This article was written by Kirsty Dorsey and it's being read by me, Corey. Clyde Hydrogen Systems, a spin-out from the University of Glasgow, has launched a €6 million, £5 million seed funding round following a critical technical breakthrough. The company says the milestone of hydrogen production at more than 100 bar underscores its capability to deliver cost-effective solutions for the global transition to net zero. Chief Executive James Peake, who joined the company in October, said the fresh funding will be used to develop a fully integrated pilot system by the end of the year, with a commercial demonstrator to follow in 2027. Clyde Hydrogen uses a process known as decoupled electrolysis, a new approach to renewable hydrogen production developed by Professor Mark Symes and others within the university's School of Chemistry. Unlike incumbent electrolysis technologies, decoupling electrolysis gives the user the unprecedented ability to split water into hydrogen and oxygen at separate rates and in completely separate reactors. This technical milestone validates years of dedicated research and development, Mr. Peake added. It demonstrates our ability to scale lab-based innovations into commercially viable technology. With this funding round, we aim to propel Clyde Hydrogen towards delivering a production-ready system and playing a key role in the UK's renewable energy future. The new round of funding will build on pre-seed investments from Zinc and the University of Glasgow, along with grants from the Scottish Government's Hydrogen Innovation Scheme and the Net Zero Technology Centre. Clyde Hydrogen's decoupled electrolysis process involves an electrochemical reducer that creates a reduced mediator solution and a catalytic hydrogen generator that produces high-pressure hydrogen gas. It is designed to convert low-quality, intermittent renewable power into clean hydrogen while also offering improved efficiency and safety over conventional systems. Mr. Peake was previously Chief Customs Officer at hydrogen electric aircraft developer Zero Avia. Founded in California in 2017, the company has had a strong UK presence since 2019. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Christy Dorsey, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland on Wednesday, the 11th of December 2024. From the news section. Plans move ahead for 3,000 homes near Edinburgh Airport. This article has been written by Gabriel McKay and it's been read by me, Corey. Edinburgh City Council has recommended the approval of new 3,000 home development in the west of the city. The development would be constructed on a 29-acre brownfield site which used to be a runway for Edinburgh Airport. Opened in 1916 as a basic grass strip, the runway became a key military base during both of the World Wars when it was paved to accommodate the submarine Spitfire. When the airport became a commercial hub, the runway, known as 1230, the disadvantages of the runway's northwest-southeast alignment became apparent as it suffered from severe crosswinds. It became the secondary runway for Edinburgh Airport when a new longer one was opened in 1977 and has been disused since 2018, when its closure was marked by a visit from 2 RAF veterans. Proposed by Crosswind Developments, city planners have recommended that the new housing be given the green light with a final decision to be taken on December 18th. Dubbed Elements Edinburgh, it would include a mixture of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom flats and townhouses, which developers say would reduce housing pressure in the capital city. According to Crosswinds Developments plans, 46% of the site will be dedicated to green space, including a 4.5 hectare urban park connecting to wider green and blue networks. The development will create a car-light 20-minute neighbourhood with over 9 kilometres of dedicated walking and cycling routes, complementing the council's ambition to promote active travel and reduce carbon emissions. Homes will meet Passive House and Gold Standard building standards, aiming to reduce household CO2 emissions to zero and provide homes with 100% renewable electricity, contributing to Edinburgh's sustainability goals. The site is also set to feature a 500,000 square foot of commercial space. Developer Crosswinds says the site will be an opportunity to unlock future investment for the west of Edinburgh. David Kelman, Project Director at Crosswinds Development, said, "We are pleased to be moving forward with this transformative project, which aligns closely with Edinburgh's City Plan 2030. Our vision is to create a sustainable, inclusive community that enhances West Edinburgh and benefits future generations. We are hoping that the subcommittee will support our proposals, and we look forward to working collaboratively with the Council to advance our shared ambition for the city." That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Gabriel McKay, and it was read by me, Corey.
For the Herald, Wednesday, the 11th of December 2024. Sports section. Confident Rangers striker Igamame plotting Tottenham Euro takedown. This article is by Mark Walker and it's read by Ross. Informed Rangers striker Hamza Igamame insists he is gunning for Spurs ahead of Thursday's huge Europa League clash at Ibrox. The Moroccan hitman has now scored 4 goals in 4 games and is netted 3 times in Europe after scoring against Bucharest and helping himself to double in France against Nice. He looks certain to get a nod against Tottenham Hotspur, who have been struggling with poor results and injuries, and went down to a derby defeat to Chelsea at the weekend when they blew a goal led to lose 4-2. And Igamame, in an interview in his homeland, believes Rangers can carry on their excellent recent form against Ange Postecoglou's side. He said, "I know the game against Spurs will not be easy. We are facing a team who are very strong and have had some good results in the Europa League, but we believe in our capabilities and we want to make our fans happy. And Spurs are also going into the game after a loss against Chelsea. Personally, I am of course pleased with the performances I have been giving recently. I have scored in my last 2 games and I am delighted with that. As I have said, I feel my adaptation process within the club has gone well and time seems to have passed quickly. My first goal is to continue helping my team. I think it has helped because all my teammates welcomed me warmly, helped me integrate and provided me with all the assistance I needed, as well as all the coaching staff. We have a lot of challenges ahead at Rangers, and looking ahead, the national team is the dream of any Moroccan player. Everyone wants to defend the jersey of their country's team. I will continue to work hard to achieve this honour and represent their Moroccan national team." And that article is by Mark Walker and is read by Ross. For the Herald, Wednesday the 11th of December 2024. Sports section. Dynamo boss in defeat, we should have won Celtic message. This article is by Ewan Patton and it's read by Ross. The manager of Dynamo Zagreb insists that only one team looked like winning tonight's Champions League tie with Celtic, and it wasn't Brendan Rodgers' team. Nenad Bielica was adamant when he spoke to the press post-match that the Croatians were deserving of all 3 league phase points in Zagreb. The Scottish Premiership champions failed to find the breakthrough despite dominating the ball for the majority of the game, with 68% possession. The stalemate seemed to be an opportunity missed for both teams, although was undoubtedly a better point for the visitors given their next 2 games include a home tie against bottom-of-the-pile Young Boys, whereas Dynamo has to play Arsenal and AC Milan. Bielica said, "My boys played a great game today. They achieved everything I asked of them. We didn't allow anything to the opponent. We had a very good chance from Payaka, 2 shots from Baturina, so anyone should have won. It was us. Rog and Cavakenda did a great job in the middle. Neither of them are defensive midfielders, but they did a perfect job in defence. They also brought some momentum forward when they could." And that article was by Ewan Patton, and it was read by Ross. For the Herald, Wednesday, the 11th of December, 2024. Sports section. Scottish club launches Taylor Swift-inspired football kit. This article is by David Irvin, and it's read by Ross. Scottish Premiership club St Johnstone have launched a Taylor Swift-inspired football kit. The Perth side have announced a new shirt takes inspiration from success of local businesses, including fashion company Little Lies, who recently shot to fame after Taylor Swift wore one of their dresses. The third kit will also help 3 charities, with fans supporting food banks on the front of the jersey, Scotland's charity Air Ambulance on the back, and Saints in the Community on the sleeve. Proceeds from the sale of the shirt will be split between the 3 charities. The kit design is based on the dress worn by the pop sensation, which was designed by Jade Robertson, who owns the Little Lies fashion brand. After discussions with St Johnstone over Adam Webb, St Johnstone supporter Jade, who is daughter of former player Billy Betson, created the new shirt. Taylor Swift wore our dress and it went completely viral in media outlets across the world, explained Perth native Jade, owner of Little Lies. It was not just local or national, but worldwide. We sold a huge amount of the dress at the time, and it's continuing to sell well. Adam got in touch with us. He loved the story and loved that it's had such an impact. Being an American owning St Johnstone, he wanted to do something to bring it all together, and I'm always up for a challenge. The wider story can go, the more good we can do. I think that is why we wanted to launch before Christmas. Anyone worldwide can buy the strip to help fans supporting food banks, Scotland's charity Air Ambulance, and Saints in the Community. We hope it goes as far as wide as possible, and the Swifties can also get behind the kit. Francis Smith, CEO of St Johnstone, said, "We are delighted to be teaming up with Little Lies to launch our new third kit. We are continuing to drive our one club, one city, one community message, and joining forces with this successful local business is important to us. We want to support local and, as always, support good causes. This is exactly what we are doing with this kit, and we hope it can be shared as far and wide as possible. The more we manage to sell, the more we can help the charities involved, so a massive thank you to everyone who purchases the kit." And that article is by David Irvin and is read by Ross.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 11th of December 2024, from the business section. Famous jeweller's city centre store for sale as doors close. This article is by Brian Donnelly. A famous jeweller's city centre store has been put on the market as the shop closes after 50 years. The store where collectors and enthusiasts flocked is for sale, as the jeweller who occupied the site for decades retires. It comes after Joseph Bonnar earlier put the contents of the jewellery store in Thistle Street in Edinburgh to auction. Ian Mercer of Allied Surveyors Scotland, who is handling the sale, said, "After 50 years of trade, Joseph Bonnar Jewellers, striking triple window frontage, now awaits the next occupant. Collectors and enthusiasts flock to this Edinburgh institution at 72 Thistle Street, drawn by Mr. Bonnar's eye for unique and historically significant pieces, alongside his exceptional knowledge of gemstones. Through recommendation, we have been entrusted with bringing the property to the market for sale." The agent said, "Internally, the ground floor provides a front sales area, back sales, and a bespoke glass-framed staircase leading to the basement. The existing glass display cabinets are of bespoke design and may suit an ingoing occupier. The front shop benefits from a striking triple frontage, whilst there are further window openings in the rear of the shop. The basement provides functional space for an office, kitchenette, and storage. With the common stairwell, there is a store cupboard." The heritable or freehold sale of the rarely available prime retail premises is listed at offers over £475,000. That article was by Brian Donnelly. This is from the Herald Scotland of Thursday the 12th of December 2024 from the news section. Forest overlooked by famous Scottish hills put up for sale. This article is by Brian Donnelly. A forest overlooked by famous hills and rock formations has been brought to the market. The woodland on an historic Scottish island is described as a great investment opportunity. Land 4 Chartered Land and Forestry Agency is marketing Tote Forest, which is 11 miles north of the town of Portree on the popular Trotternernish Peninsula, along the northeast coast of the Isle of Skye. The agent said, Tote Forest extends over an area of 479.15 hectares, with a high volume of maturing commercial timber benefiting from felling approval. The outstanding location of Tote Forest is set against a backdrop of stunning panoramic views, with the iconic Old Man of Storr and Quiraing overlooking the forest. There is good access onto an A-class public road linking with the nearest town of Portree and the mainland. Land 4 also said, while Tote Forest offers a great investment opportunity, it is also within reach of a plethora of nearby points of interest on the island, with the charming town of Portree and its quaint harbour, colourful buildings and delightful local shops and hotels nearby. The famous Old Man of Storr and Quiraing are located just to the south of the forest, with their iconic rock formations that are easily recognisable from the many film scenes and advertisements they have featured in. The agent said, introducing a rare opportunity to own a substantial commercial forest situated on the enchanting Isle of Skye. The forest is marketed at offers over £1.75 million. That article was by Brian Donnelly.
The Herald, Friday the 13th of December in the news section. Court date set for ruling on Labour's Mary McNabb by-election win. An exclusive article by Andrew Lermonth. Voters in Glasgow North East could be without a councillor for months yet, with a court case on the Mary McNabb debacle not due to be heard until the end of February. That likely means the earliest any by-election can be held is in April. Earlier this month, the Herald told how Glasgow's newest councillor was blocked from taking her seat after failing to quit her job with the authority. Labour's Mary McNabb was disqualified just 4 days after being elected. The Local Government Scotland Act gives council employees a working day to hand in their notice following the election. With Miss McNabb named winner of the Glasgow North East by-election at 10 minutes past midnight on November the 22nd, she had until midnight on November the 25th to quit. However, she did not. It is understood Miss McNabb had asked a line manager for advice, as she had, prior to being selected as Labour's candidate, negotiated an early retirement settlement, and was concerned about potentially losing her so-called golden goodbye. However, neither she nor Labour spoke to the returning officer or the local authority's HR team. Senior officials in the council have been taking legal advice over Miss McNabb's position, as this is the first time anywhere in the UK that a newly elected councillor who is also an employee of the council has failed to quit their job. Given the lack of precedent, they have applied to Sheriff Principal Aisha Anwar for a decade later to get a definitive ruling on the law. A procedural hearing has now been assigned for the 24th of January 2025, but the full hearing will not be until the 21st of February. The Sheriff Principal's decision could come immediately, or it could take days or weeks. The Council has 3 months from the date of the outcome of the hearing to hold a by-election. It is likely they will want to move fast. However, they will need at least 35 days. The returning officer will also need to take into consideration a whole range of factors, including the availability of the venue for holding the count at any holiday periods. Even if the Sheriff Principal comes to a decision on the day, the earliest the by-election could be held is the 3rd of April, just over 4 months after Miss McNabb was disqualified. A spokesperson for the SNP group on Glasgow City Council said, "Community like those in the North East rely on strong, active and engaged representation, councillors to fight their corner, and the SNP is proud of its record in this area. Yet while Glasgow has a long tradition of Labour politicians missing in action under Anas Sarwar, the party is now so chaotic and incompetent it can't even see an election through without screwing up. People in Easterhouse, Rockhazy, Garthmalnock and every other local neighbourhood will be less than impressed at another by-election, costing them in excess of £80,000 and shutting local schools again. This mess has been entirely of Labour's doing, but at no point have they taken any responsibility, apologised, nor offered to reimburse the money this removes from the city finances. Rather than disrespect voters, the SNP will continue to deliver locally for residents." Glasgow Conservative Group leader Councillor Thomas Kerr said, "Voters in this ward and across Glasgow will be outraged that Labour's astonishing oversight will potentially leave them in limbo for months. Scottish Labour should foot the bill for this by-election rather than leaving taxpayers to pick up the tab." This sorry saga sums up why many Glaswegians are scunnered with politicians. They put their faith in the Labour Party only to be let down once again by gross incompetence from their group's leadership. It is simply not good enough that this failure to follow the rules could leave Glasgow North East short of a councillor until well into next year. Only the Scottish Conservatives are working to rebuild trust with disconnected voters who just want to see some common sense for a change. Labour did not respond to requests for comment. Glasgow City Council declined to comment. Last week, Mr Sarwar described the situation as an administrative mess. When asked if this was down to incompetence from Labour, given the legislation banning being both a councillor and a council employee has been enforced for 20 years and was brought in by the last Labour Scottish executive, Mr Sarwar said, "Well, I think you need to speak to Mary McNabb and speak about the conversations that she was having with her employer and the process that she was told to follow with her employer. So I don't think this one's on the Labour Party, to be honest," he added. Responding to Mr Sarwar's comments, a spokesperson for Glasgow City Council said, "The Council's elections team issues guidance to all candidates and agents in advance of every election. On behalf of the returning officer, this includes the Electoral Commission's guidance on when employees who are elected to local authorities are required to resign their positions. In this case, neither the candidate nor their party sought any further advice from the returning officer or from the Council's election team. It would not be legal or appropriate to discuss the details of any individual's employment without their consent. However, nobody would reasonably expect a line manager to offer his specialist advice on election law."
From the Herald, Sunday, 15th of December 2024, Sports Section. The wait is over. The next Usain Bolt has arrived. By Susan Eaglestaff, sports writer. Each and every sport needs one thing above all else to flourish, and that's superstars, or at the very least, one superstar. It's no coincidence that the popularity of any sport correlates directly with the superstardom or not of its athletes. And this single factor is in large part exactly why track and field has struggled so much in recent years. Athletes has traditionally produced athletes who have transcended their sport. From Seb Coe and Steve Ovett in the 1980s to Michael Johnson and Kathy Freeman in the 1990s and early 2000s, to most recently the greatest superstar of them all, Usain Bolt. The Jamaican became not only the biggest name in athletics, but arguably the biggest name in global sport. Bolt had the full package, lightning quick times on the track, a sack full of world and Olympic titles, and perhaps most importantly, a personality and charisma that drew people in. But since Bolt's retirement from athletics back in 2017, track and field has had a problem, a huge problem. It struggled desperately to produce an athlete to take up Bolt's mantle of the superstar of the sport. but finally the wait may be over. A sprinting sensation who appears to be just as talented, if not even more talented than Bolt, has emerged, and this may be what saves athletics from its current dip in popularity. Gout is just 16 years old, and to call him a sprinting prodigy is like understating it quite considerably. Gout is a phenomenon. The teenager from Australia has been on the radar of athletics aficionados for a few years, but it's only this month in which Gout has hit the mainstream. He is, to put it mildly, fast. Very fast. Just over a week ago, he lined up for his 100-metre heat of the All Schools Athletics Championship in Queensland, Australia. Most people expected him to do well, but not this well. Gout crossed the line in 10.04 seconds. He had a slight tailwind, but still the fact it's the fastest ever time run by anyone of his age, the fourth fastest by any runner under 18 years old, and the time that only 3 British men have ever bettered, highlights just how unique an individual this teenager is. Gout won the final inside the legal wind limit in 10.17 seconds, which places him 8th on the under-18 all-time list. This, however, was just the start of things. The following day, Gout returned to produce arguably an even more impressive performance, winning 200-metre gold in an Australian senior record of 20.04 seconds, and placing himself second on the all-time list for the 200 metres for under-18s. Notably, Gout displayed a certain Bolt on this list. The teenager is the son of Sudanese immigrants who moved to Australia 2 years before Gout was born. He grew up in Queensland, and it was as a 13-year-old at school that his sprinting talent was first identified. His progress has been rapid, and with a particularly notable performance of this year being his silver medal in the 200 metres at the World Under-20 Championships. One is always something of a hostage to fortune when predicting the next big thing. For every sporting protege who's been pinpointed as a future champion, there's another 20, maybe even more, who've shown talent as young athletes only to fade into the ether as they become senior athletes. And there's even more who are touted as future champions, but become nothing more than just decent professionals. Gout may, of course, end up falling into one of these two categories, but something tells me he won't. I have a feeling, and it's a feeling that's shared by many within the athletics world, that this young Aussie could well be the real deal. There is, of course, the chance that he could become an excellent, even a world-class sprinter, yet still not quite manage to become the next Usain Bolt. But for the sake of the future of athletics, let's hope we can convert this potential into becoming a real sporting great. Even Bolt himself is singing Gout's praises. The Aussie says the Jamaican reminds him of himself in his younger days, and certainly the pair's running styles, as well as their dominance in their own age group, are not dissimilar. He looks like a young me, commented Bolt about Gout on social media. Such predictions that Gout is a superstar in the making are, of course, a heavy weight for any teenager to carry upon their shoulders. Even those most oblivious to external expectations would surely feel at least a degree of pressure in being labelled the next Usain Bolt. But if Gout can handle this pressure and continue his progress, we will, I'm sure, witness, over the decade or so, the emergence of someone who will become a true track and field great. Certainly Gout could not have timed his career any better. He's targeting qualifying for the 2025 World Athletics Championships in Tokyo, where by then he will be 17, and the 2020 Olympics in LA will surely be on his radar too. But it's the 2032 Olympic Games, which will take place in Gout's home city of Brisbane, that will likely be etched in his calendar already. Only time will tell if Gout can live up to those outlandish and perhaps unfair predictions that are being made about him. If he can, he could be the person who puts track and field back on this map. That article was by Susan Eaglestaff. From the Herald, Monday, 16th of December 2024, Sports section. From Oban to becoming a racing star, Jodie Sloss on her crazy life. By Susan Eaglestaff. sports brighter. Had someone written the story of Jodie Sloss's life over the past couple of years, it would have been tossed in the bin for being far too fantastical. Sloss herself is well aware of how unlikely her rise from being a waitress on the west coast of Scotland to one of the country's brightest motorsport talents has been. Yet having demonstrated a rare natural talent as a driver over the past 2.5 years, the 23-year-old now has her sights set on racing one of the world's most famous races. As a kid growing up in Oban, Sloss's passion was horses, not cars. And with no family involvement or even interest in motorsport, it was a discipline that barely crossed her mind. But entirely organically, an interest in cars developed, and she began dabbling in customising her own four wheels. Still, however, motorsport seemed like an alien world to the Scot. I got my driving licence as soon as I turned 17, but that was to give myself independence more than anything, she says. Motorsport intrigued me, but I didn't have anyone around who was involved, and to me it seemed like an elitist sport, and something that was pretty much impossible to get into unless you had a load of funding behind you. Entirely by chance, though, Sloss happened across a post on Facebook looking for women who had potential to become an elite driver. Clicking on the link, as it turned out, changed the course of Sloss's life entirely. I can still remember the moment I saw the post. I was sitting on my couch in my croft on the west coast of Scotland and thought, yeah, this sounds exciting, she says. The assessment day was at Knockhill, and the morning of it I wasn't even sure I was going because I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. But I forced myself to go, and we got tested on a load of things. It was my first time ever on a track. Afterwards I was thinking that was cool, but really I just forgot about it because there was 1,000 girls from 35 different countries, so I never expected anything to come of it. However, aged 21 at the time, and against the odds, Sloss won that Formula Women competition, as it was called, with the prize being to race a McLaren 570 FGT4 in the UK's 2022 GT Cup Championships. From there, Sloss's life has been, she says, a complete whirlwind and entirely surreal. With the Scot having shown in 2024 that she has the talent to progress to the very top of the sport. Having been selected for the 2024 Aston Martin Racing Driver Academy, highlights of the first half of the season were podium places in the GT Cup at Donington Park and Brands Hatch. Her success continued throughout the year with the pole position, the fastest lap, and another podium finish on her debut in the Porsche Sprint Challenge Great Britain. On the face of it, Sloss's life is enviably glamorous, but she admits it's far more testing than many may imagine. I do feel like my life is surreal. So many of the opportunities I'm having, I'm like, wow, this is crazy, she says. Motorsport is hard, though. People often don't realise how much work goes in behind the scenes. I'm constantly working to try and build my brand and get myself out there to make sure I can continue being in a race scene. I've learned so much over the last 2 years, but it's constant. I've had really challenging times, but it's shaped me as a driver. And when you get that fastest lap or a place on the podium, all that hard work seems worth it. It's an astonishing coincidence that Sloss hails from the same town as one of Scotland's most well-known motorsport exports, Susie Wolff, who in 2014 at the British Grand Prix became the first woman to take part in a Formula One race weekend in over 2 decades. Wolff is now managing director of the F1 Academy. And despite Wolff being almost 20 years Sloss's senior, the younger of the Oban natives admits the 42-year-old trailblazer has long been an inspiration for her. She's the main person I've looked up to in motorsport, Sloss says. We went to the same high school, and they've seen what she's done as a driver, and what she's doing for females in motorsports is incredible. Sloss is in the midst of finalising her plan for 2025, but already she's well aware of the importance of the next 12 months to her career in the long term. And with her sights set on racing Le Mans 24-hour in the future, Sloss is desperate not to waste any time in advancing her career further. When I first got into motorsport, I went into GT racing and fell in love with that. That's where the goal of Le Mans stemmed from. So for me, it's not F1 that's a goal. It's Le Mans, she says. There's a lot of things on the table for next year, so I'm excited to see what I can do in 2025. That article was by Susan Eaglestaff.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 16th of December 2024. From the Voices section. Brexit misery here to stay, but there was one point of light. Article written by Ian McConnell. Brexit has been back in the spotlight in the last week, in large part because of Rachel Reeves becoming the first UK Chancellor to attend a meeting of European Union finance ministers since the country's utterly lamentable departure from the bloc. There was something of a song and dance around Miss Reeves' trip to Brussels. However, there was not surprisingly little correlation between the excitement over the visit and what it achieved. The trip never looked likely to fuel any kind of hopes of meaningful mitigation of the Brexit damage. The warm talk was, of course, better than the hostility to the EU shown by so many Conservative government ministers in the run-up to the UK being ripped out of the European single market at the end of 2020. Memories of the attitude towards the EU from Lord David Frost, Boris Johnson's chief Brexit negotiator and former chief executive of the Scotch Whisky Association, remain fresh. It is without doubt good that we have seen the back of that era. However, Labour's red lines on Brexit, seemingly drawn up with wooing of Leave voters in mind, remain destructive indeed for the UK economy and society. They stand in the way of any major progress on tackling the huge Brexit damage. This ongoing damage is the result of the UK losing frictionless trade with its largest trading partner and the ending of free movement of people between the country and the European Economic Area. The loss of frictionless trade has caused major woe for exporters and indeed importers in the UK, weighing heavily on the economy. And the growth potential of the UK economy has been hampered greatly by the ending of free movement of people, which has seen myriad sectors affected enormously by skills and labour shortages. My column in the Herald on Wednesday on Miss Reeves' visit to Brussels observed, "When it comes to politicians, it is imperative to strip away the gloss and consider the substance of the matter." It added, "There was a bit of breathless reporting about the reset of relations with the EU talked about by Miss Reeves. However, the key takeaway from Miss Reeves' visit is surely, sadly, that nothing of substance has really changed." Crucially, Miss Reeves highlighted again after the meeting Labour's red lines about not rejoining the EU or the single market, or even the customs union, and not agreeing to free movement of people. These huge impediments to progress in addressing Brexit damage were drawn up well in advance of the general election and trotted out diligently on many occasions by Labour's top brass. Labour has seemed at pains for so long now to pander to those red wall voters who swept Mr Johnson to power in December 2019 on a hard Brexit mandate. Yet it was only back in late 2019 that Sir Keir Starmer was arguing so vociferously against Brexit in the House of Commons. Highlighting the Brexit stance of Prime Minister Sir Keir and Labour these days, the column on Wednesday noted, "Labour has no interest in repairing the crucial bonds with the EU, nor the albeit valuable ones of trust, but the far more meaningful ones that existed before Boris Johnson's hard Brexit destroyed frictionless trade and free movement of people between the UK and the European Economic Area. Labour appears keen to engage in detailed negotiations with the EU about what would be, in effect, only slight improvements in the post-Brexit relationship. Something is always better than nothing, but it seems odd to devote large amounts of time and energy trying to wring out some minor concessions from the EU while turning your back on the real prizes, frictionless trade and free movement, seemingly for fear of upsetting Brexit voters." The column argued that Labour surely has a responsibility to tell the UK electorate how it is on Brexit and stop kidding itself on. Slightly more positively, there appeared to be a hint from the Labour government that it had not ruled out completely the idea of a youth mobility scheme between the UK and EU, a proposal raised by the bloc. It is important to realise that, even if this did materialise, it would do little to address the great damage being done to the UK economy and living standards by Brexit. However, at least it might reinstate some of the opportunities of which young people in the UK were robbed by Mr Johnson's hard Brexit. Nick Thomas Symonds, Minister for the Constitution and European Union Relations, was asked about the idea of a youth mobility scheme when he appeared before the House of Lords European Affairs Committee last Tuesday. In terms of the Labour government's stance on this, it appeared he might just have left the door ajar. He said, "It's for the EU to finalise proposals it wants to put on the table. It depends on what precisely you mean by youth mobility." The apparent signal on this front is clearly far from categoric, and freedom of movement of people is a topic that seems to put so many of the Brexiters so much on edge. The Labour government, so fearful of upsetting the Brexit voters, will be well aware of the sensitivity of this contingent when it comes to free movement. That said, amid the Brexit misery, Mr Thomas Symonds perhaps leaving the door open to some form of youth mobility scheme, however slightly, was definitely a point of light. That article was written by Ian McConnell and read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 16th of December 2024, from the Voices section. We best make decisions to support Ferguson Marine Shipyard. Article written by Paul Sheeran, Chief Executive of Scottish Engineering. Last month I was in Port Glasgow and lucky to visit and tour around MV Glensannox the very day before the Marine and Coast Guard Agency announced that it had achieved full regulatory approval, including its passenger certification. It was a privilege to witness the sense of achievement and pride within the Ferguson Marine employees working on board whilst I was there. Much has been said about the complexity of its design and the build difficulties that have resulted in late delivery, but to see it firsthand demonstrates that it's an impressive piece of engineering and functional capability to be proud of. If that seems like an overly light dismissal of the cost to both public purse and loss of service to island communities of this situation, then that's not my intention. There have been major errors by stakeholders through this part of the yard's history, but we are where we are. Let's learn and action the lessons, put the less constructive coal raking behind us, and focus on creating a viable future for the yard and its greatest asset, its skilled people. What comes next is the all-important question, as, whilst attention turns to completion of MV Glen Rosa, the skills and capability of the wider workforce at Ferguson Marine ultimately need a pipeline of work that meets the very reason they exist: ships to build. There are lots of good reasons why ensuring that work continues is important, perhaps most obviously because Fergusons are a major employer in an area where that quality of employment is prized, bringing well-paid, fair work that makes a positive impact in the area. Employees who live local to the shipyard make up an impressive 85% of the staff who work there. The Inverclyde area has well-documented challenges, and as recently as 2022, a cross-party, cross-government task force was set up to deal with the significant job losses at Amazon, IBM, Kyndryl, Bibby and EE, reported then as up to 1,200 jobs at risk of leaving the area. In contrast to that, since Ferguson Marine restarted in 2014, there has been a quieter good news story in the yard's commitment to training its own highly skilled workforce. In the decade past, over 130 modern apprentices gaining engineering skills have been started, with additional graduate apprentices adding to a workforce that has almost 300 people working and contributing to the local economy. March 2025 sees the announcement of a contract award that could be a key part of keeping the Newark yard busy when the winning bid for 7 electric ferries for the Clyde and Hebrides networks is expected to be released. At this stage, Ferguson Marine has successfully reached the shortlist of 6 potential suppliers and is one of only 2 UK bidders. That the contract commits to the build of 7 common design ferries in this first phase is an attractive feature to any shipbuilder. A long-sighted programme over 7 vessels allows for first-of-kind learnings on Ship 1 to be refined and built into Ships 2, 3, 4 and so on, bringing efficiencies and cost saving over the full build. The common design will also allow application of production line type approaches to modules for further efficiencies, and the longer timeline means that investments for productivity that can't be justified over 1 or 2 ships now make sense. These features of such a contract would be a great match for Ferguson Marine at this stage of their journey to being a stable, commercially competitive shipbuilder. Keen observers have pointed out that the size of these vessels, at 50 metres long, is just one of the similarities to 3 small ferries previously built by Ferguson Marine on time and to cost. The contract award process will follow its own path, but in doing so, I hope that when the costs of the various bids are compared alongside the technical content, there is due consideration for the social value of the continuation of quality training, apprenticeships and employment that brings so much to the Inverclyde area. Ultimately, we have one last non-naval shipyard in Scotland, one last commercial shipyard on the Clyde. If we want to keep it, then we best make decisions that support that. Paul Sheeran is Chief Executive of Scottish Engineering, and that article was read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 16th of December 2024, from the Voices section. How to spot and combat toxic positivity in the workplace. Article written by Sharon Miller. Workplace stress is becoming a more prominent issue for employees and employers alike, and there is no silver bullet when it comes to resolving it. Mental Health UK's Burnout Report 2024 found that 9 in 10 adults experienced high or extreme levels of pressure or stress in the past year, with 1 in 5 needing to take time off work to cope. One concerning approach to handling workplace stress is fostering toxic positivity. This is where leaders, eager to promote a positive culture, overlook the real stress and burnout their employees are experiencing, which dismisses or invalidates their employees' emotions. Most leaders, with the best intentions, want to motivate their teams and maintain morale, particularly during tough times. However, pushing relentless positivity can discourage open dialogue about stress, exhaustion, or personal struggles. Encouraging employees to keep their chin up and put on a happy face can create an environment where employees feel they cannot express genuine concerns, stress, or struggles for fear of being seen as negative or weak. Telltale signs of toxic positivity in workplaces are managers downplaying concerns with overly optimistic responses, avoiding difficult conversations about stress and burnout, promoting a positive vibes only atmosphere, and expecting employees to remain engaged and on even when they are struggling. What can leaders do instead? A healthier form of positivity encourages optimism while making space for difficult emotions. It is key for managers to balance optimism with empathy. Listening actively, validating employees' feelings, and creating a safe environment for people to express challenges is crucial. Grounded in empathy and understanding, non-toxic positivity focuses on providing realistic encouragement that does not dismiss the challenges people face. Leaders who embrace this approach help teams find solutions to stress rather than trying to push it aside. We've all been guilty of responding to tough situations with phrases like, "Be grateful, it could be worse," or "Everything happens for a reason." But these statements can unintentionally shut down healthy communication. A leader who openly acknowledges that a situation is difficult will connect with their team on a deeper level. The more employees feel authentically supported and valued, the greater their engagement and satisfaction, and the bigger the boost to productivity and loyalty. While it can seem counterproductive, open acknowledgement of struggles may actually reduce employee turnover overall. Managers can also provide mental health support by promoting resources like mental health days, counselling, or flexible working arrangements. To show genuine appreciation, reward staff with thoughtful gifts and gestures that reflect true gratitude and care. Model vulnerability by sharing their own challenges, fostering a safe space for others to open up. Combating toxic positivity means creating an environment where all emotions, positives and negative, are valid. The goal is not to eliminate optimism, but to foster a balanced, human-centred approach to leadership. When employees feel that their struggles are acknowledged and addressed, they are more likely to trust leadership and feel supported, improving their well-being and performance. By replacing toxic positivity with a more grounded, empathetic approach, leaders can reduce stress and inspire a workplace culture where real positivity, built on mutual support and shared challenges, can thrive. Sharon Miller is founder of JoyWorks, the Scottish business on a mission to help people increase happiness and reduce stress. That article was read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 16th of December 2024, from the Voices section. The idea that could help save Glasgow, Sauchiehall Square. Article written by Mark Smith. Look at it now. Girders stripped of stone, gaping windows, doors to nowhere. Every now and then someone stops to take a look, but most people are heads down, eyes on phones. The wind has caught a sheet of corrugated iron, and the sound of it is accompaniment to the busker down the road having a stab at Flower of Scotland. And it's Sunday morning as well, the optimum time for feeling sad. Couple of reasons for the sadness. First, the building that used to be here, the cinema music venue O2 ABC, is home to quite a few happy memories for me, especially Adamant, best gig ever, after Morrissey, Barra's 94. Louise and I danced to Stand and Deliver and Ant Music and Puss in Boots and all the rest, and it was a happy, happy night. And you're always trying to get back to the happy nights again in a way, aren't you? Second reason, the front of the old ABC may not have been the most beautiful building in Glasgow, but it had been there since the 1890s, and its demolition and destruction is part of a melancholy story we know now, the disappearance, bit by bit, of large parts of the city's built heritage. Sometimes it's deliberate, sometimes it's neglect. Often, as with the ABC, it's by fire. What makes it worse, frequently, is the new buildings we get to replace the old ones, and in the case of the ABC, we got the first idea this week of what might rise from the ruins. It's called House of Social, and it would include, but of course, student accommodation, as well as a food hall, public courtyard, bar and gym. The drawings show a warehouse-like structure that's become familiar in Glasgow because that's what happens in architecture. Trends spread, and suddenly it's everywhere. What do I think of the plan? Meh. The positives are that, despite the gaping hole where the ABC used to be, and the somewhat pedestrian building that's proposed as its replacement, Sauchiehall Street is looking a bit better now that the upgrading work has progressed. There's still the wound of the Macintosh, though, and most importantly, there's still no real coherent plan for what we're supposed to do with this part of the city. The shops ain't coming back. We've got to get used to that fact. So we need to think what we're going to put in their place. There is one idea that needs to be talked about more, which is the Sauchiehall Square plan, and it's inspired partly by the Macintosh and partly by the Blythswood area of the city. Blythswood was, and still could be, one of the most elegant neighbourhoods of Glasgow. It was Glasgow's new town, essentially, but in the words of one expert I talked to, Graham Smith, it's been left to waste away. Mr. Smith thinks we could still turn things around by turning the site of the destroyed ABC into a public square. He calls it an art square, which would have the McClellan Galleries on one side and back onto the rear of the art school, and he's already won some support from the local businesses. It would also be helped by the creation of an improvement district along the lines of Mayor Giuliani's Madison Avenue Improvement District in New York. Mr. Smith knows what he's talking about. He had a career in planning and has written the history of Blythswood, but he also, like a lot of us, has an emotional connection to the area. When he was a boy in the 60s, he had a Saturday job at the M&S warehouse and would wheel fruit and veg down to the shop on Sauchiehall Street. He would also meet his girlfriend Jean and hang out in the coffee shops, and they are happy memories. Jean is now his wife. The point Mr. Smith is trying to make, and it's a good one, is that you need a coherent area and you need to focus on it, in the way that's been done so well with Merchant City. There was a time when the merchant city was largely warehousing and markets and so forth, and was pretty empty. People had moved away and businesses had moved out. But look at it now. There was a real focus on creating an identity for the place, and the businesses and the people returned. The same could be done for an area centred on a Sauchiehall Square. And not all of it has to cost a hell of a lot of money. We could begin, for example, with the horrible tar infill pavements. Parts of Sauchiehall Street are looking quite a bit better, admittedly. I took a walk down after looking at the ABC on Sunday morning, and it's coming on. But these should be elegant historical streets, and mostly they're not. They're patched up and ugly, and there's no sense of place. There is no focus. It's a place you go through to get somewhere else. The square, connected to the art school and the streets of Blytheswood and Garnet Hill, could provide the focus that's needed. You can see that the designers of the possible replacement for the ABC sort of get it. The idea of a public square or courtyard is in there somewhere, but blocking the views of the back of the art school with a great chunk of student flats is not going to help. We're also missing the chance to redesign an area to make it more attractive and, more importantly, create a place where you might want to linger. It's not too late, of course, but it needs focus, focus, focus. Mr. Smith makes the point that there are still plenty of businesses in Blytheswood and that it's a conservation area, and on that score alone should have lots more money spent on it. But it's not going to happen by itself. The council needs to start with a plan, he told me, but there's been no great leadership there at all for many years. The question of money looms over everything, obviously, and, like Merchant City, it would have to come mostly from businesses and the private sector. But businesses and the private sector aren't drawn to an area if it looks like large parts of Sauchiehall Street do right now, which is where the public money comes in. The main focus of city centre regeneration also has to come from the residential sector, such as the flats on the site of the old police HQ in Holland Street. The student flats proposed for Sauchiehall Street could also work, but, like Graham Smith says, they have to be part of a bigger, coherent plan. In the meantime, we have the remains of the ABC to look at. Girders stripped of stone, gaping windows, doors to nowhere. And I'm trying to be positive, I really am, but it's hard. When you've lived in a city for a long time, and in the case of me and Glasgow it's over 30 years now, its bricks and its stones start to form connections with your nerves and your emotions, so that when the bulldozers move in, you feel it. I'm not saying nothing should ever be pulled down, but come on, Glasgow's had more than its fair share. Time instead to think about what we really want to create from the rubble. Time instead to build, if we really can, something positive. That article was written by Mark Smith and read to you by Elizabeth.
From Herald Scotland, Monday 16th December 2024. From the STEM section of the business section. AI-powered blood test, first to spot earliest signs of breast cancer. Article by Craig Williams. A new screening method that combines laser analysis with a type of AI is the first of its kind to identify patients in the earliest stage of breast cancer, a study suggests. The fast, non-invasive technique reveals subtle changes in the bloodstream that occur during the initial phases of the disease, known as Stage 1A, which are not detectable with existing tests, the team says. Researchers at the University of Edinburgh say their new method could improve early detection and monitoring of the disease and pave the way for a screening test for multiple forms of cancer. Standard tests for breast cancer can include a physical examination, X-ray or ultrasound scans, or analysis of a sample of breast tissue known as a biopsy. Existing early detection strategies rely upon screening people based on their age or if they are in at-risk groups. Using the new method, researchers were able to spot breast cancer at the earliest stage by optimizing a laser analysis technique known as Raman spectroscopy and combining it with machine learning, a form of AI. Similar approaches have been trialled to screen for other types of cancer, but the earliest they could detect disease was at stage 2, the team says. The new technique works by first shining a laser beam into blood plasma taken from patients. The properties of the light after it interacts with the blood are then analysed using a device called a spectrometer to reveal tiny changes in the chemical makeup of cells and tissues, which are early indicators of disease. A machine learning algorithm is then used to interpret the results, identifying similar features and helping to classify samples. In the pilot study involving 12 samples from breast cancer patients and 12 healthy controls, the technique was 98% effective at identifying breast cancer at stage 1A. The test could also distinguish between each of the 4 main subtypes of breast cancer, with an accuracy of more than 90%, which could enable patients to receive more effective, personalised treatment, the team says. Implementing this as a screening test would help identify more people in the earliest stages of breast cancer and improve the chances of treatment being successful, the team says. They aim to expand the work to involve more participants and include tests for early forms of other cancer types. The study is published in the Journal of Biophotonics. Blood samples used in the study were provided by the Northern Ireland Biobank and Breast Cancer Now Tissue Bank. It also involved researchers from the University of Aberdeen, the Rhine-Waal University of Applied Sciences, and the Graduate School for Applied Research in North Rhine-Westphalia. Dr. Andy Downs of the University of Edinburgh's School of Engineering, who led the study, said, "Most deaths from cancer occur following a late-stage diagnosis after symptoms become apparent, so a future screening test for multiple cancer types would find those at a stage where they can be far more easily treated. Early diagnosis is key to long-term survival, and we finally have the technology required. We just need to apply it to other cancer types and build up a database before this can be used as a multi-cancer test." And that article was written by Craig Williams. From Herald Scotland, Monday, 16th December 2024. From the STEM section of the business section. Former finance chief joins Scottish golf technology business. Article by Christy Dorsey. Former Standard Chartered Chief and Labour Minister Lord Mervyn Davies has been named the new chairman of ShotScope as the Edinburgh company gears up its efforts to become a global golf brand. Lord Davies, an avid golfer and sport enthusiast, replaces Ken Lewandowski, who joined ShotScope in 2016 and resigned as chairman earlier this year. The company was set up in 2015 by its chief executive, David Hunter, and has developed tracking technology that automatically records and uploads every shot that a golfer takes. Earlier this year, ShotScope closed a £6.6 million funding round, headed up by lead investor Guinness Ventures. In November, its 38 members of staff moved into new, larger office premises. I am excited to join ShotScope as chairman of the board. Our innovative products are sold in over 160 countries and stocked by leading golf and sport retailers worldwide, Lord Davies said. I look forward to working with the team and shareholders to deliver our ambitious international growth plans and establish ShotScope as a global brand within golf. Raised and educated in Wales, Lord Davies first joined Standard Chartered in 1993 and served as Chief Executive between 2001 and 2006. He thereafter served as Chairman until January 2009. Awarded a CBE in 2002 for his services to the financial sector, he is currently Chairman of the Lawn Tennis Association and international investment business Letter One. He also sits on the Executive Committee of World Rugby. We are delighted to welcome Lord Davies to the board. His wealth of experience growing global brands and passion for sport and entrepreneurship is a perfect fit, Mr. Hunter said. ShotScope has raised more than £18 million in funding to date, which includes support from Scottish Enterprise, which has provided £1.75 million of innovation funding and £3.3 million of investment into the company. And that article was written by Christy Dorsey. From Herald Scotland, Monday 16th December 2024. From the STEM section of the business section. Investment cheer for hydrogen power advocates. Article by Christy Dorsey. There's been some positive news today for Scotland's hydrogen energy sector, with confirmation of a multi-million-pound fundraising for technology developed in Glasgow. Clyde Hydrogen Systems, a spin-out from the University of Glasgow, has launched a €6 million, £5 million seed funding round following a critical technical breakthrough. The company says the milestone of hydrogen production at more than 100 bar underscores its capability to deliver cost-effective solutions for the global transition to net zero. Chief Executive James Peck, who joined the company in October, said the fresh funding will be used to develop a fully integrated pilot system by the end of next year. A commercial demonstrator is targeted for release by 2027. This technical milestone validates years of dedicated research and development, Mr. Peck added. It demonstrates our ability to scale lab-based innovations into commercially viable technology. With this funding round, we aim to propel Clyde Hydrogen towards delivering a production-ready system and playing a key role in the UK's renewable energy future. The funding round builds on pre-seed investments from Zinc and the University of Glasgow, along with grants from the Scottish Government's Hydrogen Innovation Scheme and the Net Zero Technology Centre. Developed at the university's School of Chemistry, Clyde Hydrogen's decoupled electrolysis process involves an electrochemical reductor that creates a reduced mediator solution and a catalytic hydrogen generator that produces high-pressure hydrogen gas. Decoupled electrolysis is a new approach to renewable hydrogen production, developed by Professor Mark Symes and others at the university. Unlike incumbent electrolysis technologies, decoupled electrolysis gives the user the unprecedented ability to split water into hydrogen and oxygen at separate rates and in completely separate reactors. This is designed to convert low-quality, intermittent renewable power into clean hydrogen. The company says it also offers improved efficiency and safety over conventional systems. Mr. Peck was previously Chief Customer Officer at Zero Avia, a hydrogen. From Herald Scotland, Monday 16th December 2024. from the STEM section of the business section. Scottish Battery Energy Storage Park approved by ministers. Article by Brian Donnelly. Plans for a 100 megawatt battery energy storage project have been approved. The green light from Scottish ministers was described as a milestone. ILI Group said that Section 36 planning consent had been granted for its Flemyland Battery Energy Storage System BESS project in Kilwinning, North Ayrshire, by Scottish ministers. It said, "This milestone marks the third major planning approval for ILI Group in the final quarter of 2024, following consents for the 200 megawatt Whitehill project near Gartcosh and the 50 megawatt Lochluchert project in the Highlands last month. The consents, totalling 350 megawatts of energy storage capacity, demonstrate ILI Group's momentum in delivering critical infrastructure to support Scotland's renewable energy transition." Mark Wilson, Chief Executive of ILI Group, said, "To achieve three major planning consents is an incredible way to end the year. They represent a collective step forward in providing the energy storage capabilities Scotland needs to meet its net zero targets. These projects will ensure renewable energy is utilised effectively, supporting a secure and stable grid while reducing reliance on fossil fuels. Strategically, the connection dates for these projects align perfectly with the anticipated grid connection reforms, positioning them to play a crucial role in Scotland's energy infrastructure for years to come." The Hamilton-based firm said that the approval highlights ILI Group's pivotal role in Scotland's renewable energy journey, adding, "Battery energy storage systems, BESS, are essential for modern energy grids, providing critical services such as grid balancing, renewable energy storage, and fast response capabilities to stabilise supply and demand. With these three projects gaining consent, ILI Group continues to demonstrate its commitment to driving forward Scotland's clean energy goals." And that article was written by Brian Donnelly.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday the 17th of December 2024 from the Voices section. Good old Gordon Brown. He jolly well came to the rescue of Toryland, UK. This article is by Kevin McKenna. My primary school teacher would occasionally chivvy us out of our bad habits with an assortment of admonitory aperçus. One of her favourites was a quite usually attributed to the 19th century French poet Charles Baudelaire. The devil's greatest trick is to convince the world he doesn't exist, she would intone gravely. She also quoted from the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, in which a senior devil instructs his nephew on how to bring about the eternal damnation of a chap known only as the patient. Even the classroom bams sat up during that one. The UK Tories are the greatest disciples of this satanic legerdemain. In order to secure power, millions of working-class people who have been the multi-generational victims of their capitalism and profiteering must be persuaded nevertheless to vote for them. That the Tories have held power more often than Labour in the democratic era shows how well they have sold the lie. Indeed, since the middle of the 1990s, they have finessed the masquerade exquisitely. The business of running a country can be very taxing and exacts a massive physical and psychological toll. All those deeds and private practices in which they could once indulge themselves, free from scrutiny and public censure, were becoming more difficult to conceal. It's all very well saying that a decent cabinet post or select committee chairmanship can grease the wheels of your post-parliamentary career, but that's not going to work if your dabs get found all over dodgy deals with people working against the interests of your country, and your coupon is smudged all over the front page of those increasingly bold public prints. Or your foundation garments are discovered in bedchambers where you really ought not to be. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could take a 5 or 10-year breather from running the country without worrying about handing it over to socialists or some other ghastly sorts who might try to halt the gravy train that's always run so smoothly for your clients? All you'd need to do is find some willing participants during their Oxford and Cambridge years to volunteer for duty behind enemy lines. The main purpose would be to maintain the pretense of a liberal democracy by telling the punters that they actually have a choice between left and right. You could organize it along the lines of the Hogwarts sorting hat ceremony in the Harry Potter books. Mr. Blair, you will go into the Labour Party. Now, hurry along. There's a good chap, and remember what we told you. No stirring up any passions. Keep the bread and circuses going, and hands off the big clients. And do let us know who the troublemakers are. We can deal with them in other ways. And so it came to pass that the Tories' interests kept ticking over in the Blair era, and there was no noticeable reduction in the gap between the richest people and the poorest. There were even a few rather splendid wars to boost the share prices and keep the markets happy. Why, even the royal family found their fortunes boosted and their property portfolios undiminished. What a splendid chap that Mr. Blair was. The next time he's visiting the club, get him to tell you how he managed to ditch Clause 4 and got Prescott to think he was keeping the red nose blooming to keep the rank and file in order. Rather ingenious, what? Who could have foretold, though, that Blair Mark II would turn out to be such a fabulous upgrade on the original model? That Sir Keir chap is a splendid fellow. Who recruited him? Admittedly, the size of his majority looked a bit dicey at first. When a chap gets a windfall as large as that, the danger is that it might turn his head and give him radical ideas about social justice and levelling up. But, by Jove, what a wonderful job he's doing. Poor northern codgers are coughing up to balance the books, and everyone's swallowing the porkies about illegal immigrants and asylum seekers. Nothing works better than creating the enemy within to avert the gaze of the punters. The Blessed Margaret showed us perfectly how to do that with the miners. Why, he's even providing the chaps in the arms industry with a rather timely windfall. But isn't Ukraine the gift that keeps on giving? And the punters are swallowing that one too. And isn't it just marvellous how no one's taking a blind bit of notice of the fact that their new king and his eldest son are a pair of billionaire landowners and property tycoons who don't pay tax? And to think people were getting upset once upon a time that his dear old mamma wasn't shedding enough tears for the Lady Di. Isn't life just wonderful? Even the revolting Scots have had their gas set at a peep. There won't be any independence now. Everyone has played their part up there beautifully. In fact, MI5 didn't even have to do much manipulation. They seem to have killed it off themselves. Admittedly, that Salmond character was threatening to throw a spanner in the works, and for a time it was touch and go. But who knew that good old Gordon Brown would come to our rescue with the sort of moves and deceptions that would have thrilled even the Blessed Margaret? And by jingo, what a friend we never knew we had in Nicola Sturgeon. She's set a new standard for pulling the wool over the punter's eyes. Even Starmer could learn something from her. Is there not still something we can do for her in her hour of need? She might yet come in handy. The Nationalists replaced their smartest people with their most dim-witted, and then embraced identity politics and cycle lanes, while thousands are dying of addiction and homeless numbers are rising. And, listen to this, they're actually encouraging people to shoot up so that they don't need to spend money on rehab beds. The calibre of their ministers and civil servants is so low that our friends in the big financial management firms are getting brought in to sort out all the messes. Rupert was telling me the Christmas bonuses this year have been joyous. The Scots are even more gullible than their brethren down here. Seems the Nationalists are set for another term. All together now, we all live in a Tory wonderland. That article was by Kevin McKenna.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, rate and review, and tell your friends about our service.